Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our third live event of the YU 2020 Summer of Opportunity. I'm so excited about tonight's event because we would not have a Summer of Opportunity if we did not have opportunities to offer. And how this summer came together at the last minute without hesitation from those within our community is something that we should all be proud of and all be so happy that we're a part of. So tonight, we have with us three people that I really feel epitomize just what opportunity means and about this summer and how they took advantage and saw the possibility and are really making the most of it for the students and for themselves. So we have Professor, and I'll let each person introduce themselves, but we have Professor Thom Kennon with us, Professor Maria Blekher, and student Benjy Aryeh. I have questions for each. I have questions for all. And before we get started, if each one of you could just say a little bit about yourself and the role you play at Yeshiva University. Maria?
Yeah, hi everyone. It's great seeing you here tonight. Thank you for joining. It's 7 p.m., so you made the effort. So I'm Maria Blekher. I'm currently the head of the YU Innovation Lab. I'm also professor of digital strategies. I teach marketing, marketing research, business in the Israeli environment. I work mostly on the intersection between academia and industry, so I work a lot with startups, both Israeli and New York based, and connecting them to the YU student body and the wider community and tech ecosystem. I think
Thanks, Maria.
That will be for now.
Thank you. And what about you, Benjy?
Hi guys, Benjy. I'm a rising senior. I'm majoring in finance and minoring in marketing. And yeah, I'm excited to join this panel.
Okay, welcome. And what about you, Thom?
I have been teaching and working at YU for a year now. I started out, Maria asked me to join to help with the Innovation Lab last summer, and I've been teaching since last fall inside the CATS program that Maria managed until quite recently around the digital marketing media master's course, and was been an agency strategy guy for many years. I've had my own businesses, my own agencies. I have a consulting group called Free Radicals now. But to your point, Susan, it was when Maria threw my hat in the ring to Dean Wasserman and Dean Strauss and my eventual colleagues to try to build something, that was very much like changing tires at 80 miles an hour. I said, yeah, I'm your guy. And the last 3 weeks, 4 weeks have been one of the most rewarding experiences of my entire life.
Amazing. Well, Yeshiva University is really lucky to have you. We're so glad that you joined us. I'm Susan Bauer. I'm the Executive Director of the Career Center. I'll be modeling, I'll be mediating the panel tonight. And I'm going to start with a question for everyone. So what was the first thought that you had when you learned that the remainder of the spring semester would be remote? So some point towards the end of March, when 1 day off became 3 days off, became a week off, became Pesach, and then it was, okay, but we're not coming back and we will probably be remote this summer. So Thom, what's the first thing that went through your head?
It's interesting. I've been teaching mostly graduate level, but also undergrad marketing and business for 15 years. And I started out actually online. I started out building a program for the University of Canberra, completely online, marketing masters. And I always thought, yeah, it just doesn't fulfill. And in that short period of time in March that you just described, Susan, I went to, oh gosh, I guess to, wow, this is worse. And my first reaction was enduring, which is that this, because of the intensity of the situation, this became, rather than an inconvenience or a barrier to connection and intimacy, an incredible moment, I think, that I realized very quickly for us to get that much closer in a strange way to each other, just because we're we're looking at each other's faces that closely each week. So my first thought was, this is not going to be great. And my second thought was, wow, this is something how special.
Okay, thank you. Maria, what about you?
Yeah, so my first thought was, wow, we're living during incredible times, putting the health concerns aside, and we're living through a disruption. And I'm coming from an entrepreneurial background, so disruption is always a great opportunity for innovation and creativity. So that was my first thought, and my second thought was, okay, so how can we make it work? And how can we recreate a very meaningful and impactful engagement for students online? Now, having said that, with YU, we've been using Canvas for several years, and I've been running the digital marketing and media program, the master's one, that was initially created online. So on a personal level, I had a lot of experience with designing online courses and teaching online. And I knew that we have this kind of in-house capability at YU. So I was, it was, again, the entire situation was somewhat disruptive, but on the YU end, I had a lot of confidence in our ability to adjust. And I can say that we were probably one of the first universities in New York City that decided to go online. And, I think we did a good job.
No, I agree. And Benji, what about you as a student? What went through your mind?
I was definitely in shock right away. I felt like, that the world was going to change in a way that no one would really be ready for because it was essentially shutting down. But on the other hand, I have always wanted to try out what an online course would be like. So I was kind of very antsy to get that going and try to have that experience. But yeah, it was definitely a nerve-wracking time, especially because there's so much unknown going on. Are we going to come back after the weekend? Are we coming back after a week? And then it turns out we're just not coming back, and then hopefully we'll be back sometime soon. But it was definitely interesting time.
Yeah, that goes without saying. So the next question I have is for our faculty. So as someone who, teaches in the Yeshiva University community, our community, we care so much about our students. And what were your immediate thoughts as faculty about what the summer would look like for our students during this challenging time? Maria?
Yeah, so I'll be honest, I was back in March, I was very optimistic. When I had my apparently last class, back in the time we didn't know it was the last one in the beginning of March, and it was before Purim, and I had students who came into the classroom with suitcases packed to go home, and we were speaking about, well, see you after Pesach. Because we didn't think that we won't be on campus for so long. And so that was, again, the initial step for me when, I'm looking at the ecosystem at large, looking at other businesses, looking at the startup environment, looking at other institutions. When you realize that everything is being disrupted, I think that my second thought was, well, the summer is going to be completely different for our students who usually have internships, jobs, camps, and a very busy summer. And so the next thought was, okay, how we as YU and how the Innovation Lab can support the efforts of creating a meaningful summer experience for our students. And that was another, just the second part is, since the Innovation Lab collaborates a lot with Israeli startups, I started to receive a lot of emails and people who started to reach out to me to see if there is something that we will be doing during the summer, if there is any kind of research that the students will be working on, since they're, you saw it, almost immediate increase in the needs of extra support for startups, especially early stage. And so I think eventually it was a win-win, and it just matched beautifully the initiative that the leadership was leading to create a new summer experience for our students.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Thom, what were your thoughts, as someone who works closely with our students, like looking at it through their lens, like what did you think, it would look like for them?
Well, it's curious because I, in the second half of essentially the last 2/3 of the spring semester, the students, the cohort that I was working with in the CATS program, Maria's program in digital media marketing, master's program, I knew that I wasn't going to be with them over the summer because they were all heading towards their capstone. And, but I did. And so, but I got anxious because we began to get really, really good at working together apart. And the focus of one of the things that we do, as Maria alluded to, very deeply inside of our teaching and our coursework is, we integrate with ourselves and our own courses and pedagogical material and our colleagues and other courses, projects from startups inside the Innovation Lab. So what I was planning for the summer was some version of what that would look like, working with the earliest and the newest startups inside of the Innovation Lab, not necessarily in a course environment. And then lo and behold, within, I guess it was probably sometime early April, late April, when Maria had sent me a note, we talked in one of our weekly meetings, and she said, look, I think there may be a role for you in something we're cooking up. Hold that thought, because we have no idea what it's going to look like. And so that was a good, wonderful teaser. And in the coming weeks, as that began to take shape and form into an idea, I started to get excited that I wouldn't be missing working with students over the summer directly inside of the context of some sort of curricula. I had no idea the kind of curricula it was going to be, and that we were going to get to make it up as we went along, and that would turn out to what it's been turning out to be. But it was tenuous times. I will tell you one other thing that it is probably. I don't know if I know it'll resonate with whether it is part of anyone else's experience, probably not. I also continue to teach as an adjunct in another very famous university here in New York City. And at the beginning of lockdown, I began to get emails daily, weekly, from two universities, Yeshiva and this other university. And I can't tell you how quickly I began to sense an extraordinary difference in those emails, in the tone of those emails. And where one was more clinical and more business and more, sort of, I don't know, just a little more, crystallized and business-like, the other was nurturing, and the other was anticipating, and the other was this incredible, it was like an embrace rather than a check-in. And so, kudos to the administration, kudos to the university for the way with which, in a comparative analysis world, which I was lucky enough to be able to, compare, the way with which they responded to the change that the pandemic brought to academia in the world was astonishing.
Thank you for that. I'm glad that you added that to your response. I believe that wholeheartedly. I do not have the experience that you have, also being part of another university. But I believe that we were really ahead of the game, and how we approached it with strategy, but also with like warmth and kindness,
Yes, totally.
and compassion for everyone in their unique situation. Okay, so the next question I have is for Benjy. So as a student, I know a little bit of your backstory, but I want you to tell the group here a bit about your original summer plan, and at what point you realized you were going to need a new plan.
All right, so my summer plans actually started to shape a little bit in January when I had the privilege to go with Susan to Israel on an awesome opportunity to visit some startups. And ever since January, I was leaning towards trying to find an internship in Israel. I was told that it's really good to have international experience, especially if you're considering, moving to Israel at some point, which is something on my mind. So at first I applied to be a participant on the Mass Challenge program, but the application was like slowly going along, and then all of a sudden COVID hit, and I just wasn't sure what was going on, if that was even a possibility still. I was in contact a lot with Susan and with the Career Center as a whole, just to see if there are any updates regarding my application process, or if there's any new opportunities that might have came in. But everyone was still in a state of shock. So it was kind of like a frozen period for like 2 weeks or so. And then I received an email from Dean Wasserman that said, oh, we're starting to think about doing this project for summer opportunities for the people that might have lost their internships or still need an internship. So I'm like, all right, doesn't hurt. Might as well just get informed. So I answered the survey. And one of the options, which I was really shocked and like very happy for, was that it considered an Israeli startup internship. So I signed up for that one. And over the course of the next like few weeks, I just got an email listing a bunch of different opportunities for me to apply to. And so I started applying. So it happens that during that time, I was
Okay, so Benjy, I think we lost you for a second. Maria and Tom, you still with us?
Yes.
Okay, all right. I think one of the important things with Benjy and why I wanted him to join this evening is, you know, he mentioned the trip that we took to Israel and we visited Mass Challenge, and he was just so present, asked so many questions, and right away said, if there's an opportunity here this summer, I want it. And partnered with me, with everyone in the Career Center, had his application in ahead of the pack. You know, he said he waited about 2 weeks. He waited about 2 seconds. He was all over this. And as soon as he knew that there was still an opportunity to do this virtual, he applied. And then we did a live event a few weeks ago with the US head of HR and talent acquisition for SimilarWeb. And during that event, she spoke about opportunities that still existed in the New York office for remote internship. And Benjy was part of that event that night. And the next day, he wrote to me and said, I picked up another internship. So, you know, he's a prime example of someone who really took advantage of this opportunity and keeps taking advantage of this opportunity. And I'm really looking forward to speaking with him at the end of the summer to see how he turns this into something that'll open doors for him in the fall. So
just to add to something that
oh,
Susan said,
here
'cause I
you are. Hi.
a little bit. Yeah, sorry, Wi-Fi is not that great. Okay, anyway, Susan pretty much said the story. It was just very interesting because going into the middle of June, I thought, all right, my summer is already in store. I'm gonna work as a business development intern for Life Journeys Media, an Israeli startup, along with doing this little investing program. And then, like Susan said, there was the first summer session, actually, the first conversation 2 weeks ago, was with someone from SimilarWeb. And that was always a company on the top of my mind. It was a company that we met in Israel also. And I found it to be a very interesting company, something that I felt like I would be able to contribute to a little bit. And I actually asked Susan like throughout the spring semester if they were going to have any internships for the summer. And it was always just, all right, we'll have to see. I need them to get back to me, etc. And then when I saw that, I'm like, all right, fine, maybe there's still a chance. And one of the benefits, I got to say, from this whole entire virus, if there are benefits, is that there have just been so many opportunities that have came up, and I'm really able to manage my time a lot better. And because everyone's in different time zones, at least for me, I'm able to space out my day according to their time zone and really take all 3 internships to its full capacity.
Thank you for adding that. And you're really doing such a great job with your professional career. So you know, one of the themes here is, you know, how to create something short notice, not knowing what your resources will be, not really even knowing the impact that it will have, how successful it will be, you know, just kind of diving in with so many unknowns, but just having the confidence and the ability to deal with the ambiguity and just, you know, having the trust and faith that it's all going to come together. So this is a question for each of you. Aside from this summer, do you have prior experience with creating something out of nothing in a very short time? Thom, we'll start with you.
Yeah, in fact, it's a perfect. There's a very unlovely saying, and I think it comes from Silicon Valley: is you eat your own dog food, which means that you practice what you preach, right? And whatever you sell to the market is the kind of stuff you use yourself. And in fact, having been, you know, like Maria, having over the years started my own companies, over the years worked for startups as a consultant, as a strategist, as a marketeer. The brief almost always is to make something out of nothing, or to make something that wasn't there before you got there. And so to do that in an environment that was essentially academic, but that just defined sort of the framework and the site, as it were. But the contents of that site and the processes and procedures inside that framework, we had to make up. And so to me, the challenge was just like the same challenge that each one of our scholars is going to experience when they get into the world of business, when they get into the world of brands, when they get into the world of technology. So to me, it was a great chance for us to sort of kind of practice what we preach. And luckily, I think many of us have come from those environments where on the fly, we had to make value happen. And that was one of the most incredible challenges. And also, you know, that's as Maria alluded to earlier, that's pure opportunity. And just like Benjy said, that's about opportunity. And being able to together collaboratively attack opportunity and create fresh value is the game.
I'm glad that you shared, you know, a little bit of your own experience. You know, you have experience doing this. You have experience creating something out of nothing. Each of you do now, but a lot of our students don't. You know, this is all new for them, and it's just like, wow, I can't believe this all came together. And now they have to reinvent themselves. You know, we know a little bit about the fall and what we're heading into, and now that they have some experience doing this for the summer, they kind of have to do what you each have experience doing and start creating the, you know, their own something. What about you, Maria? Other than this summer, you know, you have so much experience in the entrepreneurial world. What are your thoughts on like the creating something out of nothing and just diving in full steam ahead?
I love this question because, you know, it's sort of the story of my life even before I knew the English term for entrepreneurship. So like Thom said, we practice what we preach. So I think one of the first experiences I recall as creating something of literally physically out of nothing is in my military service in Israel. I was part of the team that was physically laying out a computer network in a completely new military base in the Negev in Israel. And there was physically nothing except desert and tents. So I'm familiar to the feeling, and I think it just we're taking it to a different environment. I founded an organization when I came to the US that was you know, introducing Israeli products to the American Jewish community. And so I'm very used to work in a framework where I show up, I see what there is, what are the resources, and then more importantly, what are the needs, what are kind of the places where I can add value, and then I just, you know, I'm a doer, so I build things. And that's what I did at YU. Actually, when I joined Yeshiva University, that's a story, and thanks to Mike, who is here on call, and professor of NET, I developed a course that is still titled Business in the Israeli Environments. No, it just, you know, there was a template and a list of topics, and I said, well, and they presented me with the opportunity and asked me, well, can you develop something? And I said, oh yeah. And within 2 months, I developed a full course. It was a brand new at the time. And then as I moved forward with my career at YU, I was part of, I believe it was, yeah, 2 founding teams of 2 academic programs, both the Associate in Management and the MS in Digital Marketing and Media. And then my current endeavor, which is the YU Innovation Lab, which is also a startup within a framework of Yeshiva University. So I'm a strong believer in, I love the combination of the research mindset and the entrepreneurial mindset. And this is what I'm trying to teach my students in every course that I teach. Like, as a researcher, you need to show up, you need to look around you, analyze what is the current situation, what do you see happening around you, and then bring your value and add and try to solve a challenge that you see, or try to be helpful in a way where you can add, where you can add and where you can bring, and when you can be of help to someone or for something. And I think that this is the general framework. And once you practice it and you master it, it doesn't matter if you're laying out a network in a military base, if you're starting your own startup, if you're being entrepreneurial inside a larger organization. This is just a framework you apply wherever you go.
I'm so glad that you spoke to each of those things. It's a framework. It's like a template, and you master it, and it becomes a part of your identity and who you are and how you work, and then you move forward in that way. Benjy, other than this experience that we're talking about now, where we've really highlighted how you jumped in and took advantage, it seems to me that you have a lot of this spirit and this framework and this template that Maria was talking about. Have you, up until now, is this who you are? Has this been your background? Have you always been the one that has jumped in to the unknown to create something for yourself out of nothing?
So what happened to me that last summer, I was also a little bit in a similar situation. I got an offer to be a counselor at a certain camp in the middle of January, so I had more time. But the deadline was for the following week, and I happened to be flying like that night to Israel, so I was going to be like 7 hours ahead of time. So I would kind of, I was in a little bit of a pickle. I already had my own set vacation going on over winter break. I was in the vacation mindset, but now this was on top of my mind. However, I needed to get an internship on top of that summer camp. So I only had 7 days to try to make that happen. So I found out that in the nonprofit world, at least for a few firms that I looked into, one of which was the OU, they offer internships for 1 month. So I talked to a few people that worked in the OU. And one of them mentioned to me, and it happens to be a part of the summer program this year, which I find to be awesome, was the OU Impact Accelerator, and last year was their first year. So I was privileged to be able to work with them, and I was able to get that internship going so I could sign the contract. So that was fun. And then also while I was on that summer camp last summer, we were in a science park in Queens. And we were just outside for like 3-4 hours. It was really, really hot, and the buses weren't coming. So we were like really bored. So you can only be at a science park for like a certain amount of time, especially when you're with around like 70 teenagers. So it was very, very hectic. So I got together with a couple of counselors, and we're trying to think of different ways to, spice things up a little bit, because everyone's just like hanging out to the side. They don't really know everyone yet. It's only the second day of camp. So we're like, all right, we'll just play snap baseball. So what we do is you just snap. So you set up the whole entire field as like a baseball field. So we had a guy pitching, guy catcher, I was the umpire. So the pitcher would just snap like towards the batter, and then the batter would snap, and he'd decide if he swings or misses. Or if he decides to not swing, I would be the one that calls the balls or the strikes. So it just became a thing, and everyone's like, what's going on? So they all crowded around. And we even got some of the campers to be involved in that. We happened to do that for an activity for like an hour, and then the buses came, and it was just perfect. Thankfully, I've been blessed to be spontaneous at times, which is definitely a very good strength to have in the business world, because there are a lot of surprises that come up as far as I've heard. So yeah, I'm thankful for that.
So do we credit you with creating Snap Baseball, or is that something?
No. Snap football was always a thing, so we just translated it to Snap Baseball.
Well, thanks for sharing that. You're definitely someone who can think on the fly. That's a great story. So with each of your experiences this summer, you know, Maria and Thom, you're teaching in the same course, the consulting course. And, you know, Benjy is doing a remote internship and a domestic internship. We also have students who are doing research with faculty. We have students who are doing internships within YU administration in some of the different offices. And we have students that are doing traditional internships in this non-traditional world right now with some companies, some nonprofits, you know, all of the aforementioned being part of this summer of opportunity. But can you speak a little bit, Maria and Thom, to the consulting course, how it's going? Do you think that this will just be for the summer of 2020, or do you think that this will be an inaugural program that will exist for summers to come? Thom, how do you feel about that?
Well, it's interesting, and as you highlight, Susan, there's inside the program that we with Dean Strauss and Wasserman and our colleagues, doctors Abnet and Zuloni, we built something unique, but it's got 3 different cohorts. And 2 cohorts are around what we're calling the consulting force bit, and then we've got the innovation lab cohort of 10 students, some of which I can see here tonight. And so what we looked at it as an opportunity to refine our model for integrating Israeli and New York startups into a curricular-based environment through the lens of projects. And each one of these 5 startups that we brought into the innovation lab cohort was divided up amongst those 10 students. So there's a pair of students that are essentially working for that business this summer in New York. And so as Maria had said to me in the very beginning, she said, this is a chance for us to refine and expand the model. And so we're trying stuff we hadn't done before because we were integrating a particular startup into an entire, marketing and research course, or into an entire business communication course, into an entire social media course. And we had 7 or 8 different people. Here we have 2 people working like they're actually employees of one of those 5 businesses in a real-time environment, trying to do research, trying to acquire leads, trying to drive customer acquisition, trying to develop brand architectures, trying to build a CRM database. And they're going to do it. And so to us, it was an amazing opportunity to test and enhance this model for integrating businesses into a new market through the lens of this sort of, this accelerator innovation lab that we have. So what I'm stunned at is that the productivity, the insight, the professionalism, the maturity that so far that each one of our 5 teams has exhibited is astonishing. So it's, for us selfishly, it's been an opportunity to refine and expand and almost explode this model of innovation lab working with startups in an academic framework.
So Thom, do you look at this as a pilot?
Mm-hmm. Well, as I think Maria alluded to, everything's a pilot when you're in the innovation lab business, right?
Right.
But yes, I mean, without a doubt, but an extraordinary accelerated one, because I'm spending instead of just spending 1 semester with 15 students working 3 or maybe 3 teams on 1 business across 15 sessions. Now we've got 6 sessions. 5, as I'm sure everyone knows now, because where we are, on 5 real businesses ready to go to market now, and we're taking them there. So yes, it's a pilot for truly practicing what we preach and turning our teams into business accelerators.
Thank you. No, I see it the same way, and I think it's amazing that you've had this opportunity to kind of test this model. Yeah. And there are a number of students who might not have known that much about how to get involved this summer, or were a little hesitant. Maybe they felt it was too much for them to take on this summer, too many unknowns. But now that this program is having so much success, my gut feeling is that going forward, more and more students will be interested in the Innovation Lab and in these opportunities. Maria, can you speak a little bit about how students can get involved?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think Thom gave you all the details as for the summer in the Innovation Lab, and I think for this program specifically, it gave the broader YU student community a chance to get involved, because during the semester, the Innovation Lab focused on collaborating with a business school, but we're expanding and we're growing, and Thom is here to support this grow, and the idea is to provide more students opportunities to engage with startups over the course of the year, either as part of academic courses they take, and then the projects are embedded in the curriculum of the courses, or in a form of extracurricular activities that we will be communicating hopefully within a couple of weeks. So there will be many other ways to get involved with the Innovation Lab, and we have a Medium channel where students can read some blog posts and thought leadership pieces and webinars that we're running and we're sharing. And the Innovation Lab, actually, I think we're just this week we're hiring a YU intern who is going to support our social media efforts. So hopefully, the broader YU community will hear more and more about the opportunities that we develop and present to them. And I think Thom covered the details. Like again, looking at the more traditional summers of our students, they would usually be spending time either as camp counselors or have very immersive experiences in internships. And I think what we are trying, and hopefully we're successful in this experiment to create, is a very immersive experience, summer experience for the students. And what the kind of work that Thom just described is a very immersive part of the company. And we'll see. We'll hear from the students in the end of the semester how did it work for them, because essentially they are, they're the target market, and we'll collect feedback. And we're entrepreneurs, so we do the work, we collect feedback, we adjust, and we're moving forward with an updated version. So I think this is summer. Version 1. Next summer will be summer 2.0.
I hope so. Thank you so much. I would just wanted to mention something. When you were talking before, you credited, Mike Strauss in bringing you here to YUSOOP University, and I'm really glad that he did that. So it's really exciting to hear how these initiatives can be available to students outside of the business school, and how some things will be embedded into the curriculum. And this summer was a great opportunity for students outside of the business school to be able to take advantage. That's a really great point. So thank you so much for being part of this opportunity. I want to ask each of you a question. What are the two biggest learning outcomes for each of you? And the summer is, almost at the halfway mark. So I'm not going to say for this entire experience, but from March 15th until today, if you have to identify the two biggest things that you've learned from this whole experience, what would they be? Let's start with Benjy.
So this whole pandemic has really made me learn a lot more about myself, and more of like my strengths, what I value more. So one of which was I found out that I really enjoy analyzing things, whether it be articles or just companies. I find it to just be so fascinating. With one of my internships, I have to analyze a couple of industries and write a whole report about them to present to other companies. And I've just been finding all these industries like so interesting. Like I've been working on the payments industry, the logistics industry. I would have never looked into the logistics industry. So I just find it like so fascinating, and you really learn all about how this pandemic is really shaping the world, because, you know, we're living a completely different world now where everyone's really just trying to acclimate to a new world. We have no idea when we're going to go back to the world that we know, if we're going to go back to the world that we know. So this whole entire just like experience since March has just been just like a fascinating one and a really cool experience where we're all just kind of just learning different things, what we really value more. And I find that to be very, very special.
And what about you, Maria? Two biggest things that you've learned.
Yeah, so I will build up on what Benji just said. I think the first thing is expect the unexpected, because, you know, no one knows what's going to happen. And then the second thing, to build on it, I think one of the things that I knew, but I learned once again, is what a strong and resilient community we have at YU. I think this kind of situation, and Thom mentioned that he's been, you know, working with 2 universities, and I think YU leadership took a really great stand here and provided kind of a very solid direction and a sense of community, and we're all in this together. And I think it was very important for the faculty, for the students, for the community at large. So I think how resilient our community is. I think our students prove themselves to be very flexible, very open-minded. Again, you know, we're the faculty, we have more experience. For most of them, it was the first time where they had to face a situation where, you know, in the middle of the semester, they had to completely shift all their expectations and shift to an online learning experience. And for many of them, this was the first time they had an experience with a full-time learning. And I think they did an amazing job adjusting and adapting. And you know, I think that being able to adjust and adapt and have this kind of flexible mindset is one of the key factors for success. So I knew how amazing our students are, but I learned it once again, and I'm very happy about it. I think Yeshiva University as a community at large, it proved itself to be let's frame it this way. This is a great community to be part of. So I think the pandemic starting March taught me this, or kind of strengthened this understanding with me.
Thank you. And Thom, what about you? 2 biggest takeaways, things that will stay with you that you learned during this time?
Well, one that I think we all had, which is, you know, it became a meme very early on that everything has changed, right? And the nature of the world around us. And I spent a lot of time studying, you know, the business press, and a lot of time studying brand and trade magazines, looking at campaign analytics, and looking at, and everybody in every category is saying everything is going to change now. Now, whether or not that's true or not, I know the first thing I noticed was something really, really interesting changed. And I've tested this with all of my students and colleagues since I noticed it in my own self, which is I started to unsubscribe to a lot of newsletters. I started to unfollow. I'm a crazy fiend on social media. I started to unfollow people on social media. I started to ignore or unsubscribe to emails I used to get. I stopped paying attention. I stopped looking at or reading certain things that were part of my life. And I couldn't quite figure out what was going on until I realized what had changed was the nature and meaning of value. And all of a sudden, individually, we've all set our bar for meaning and value up here. And I think that's the first thing I noticed. The second thing I noticed is, what can you do with that insight, Ken? And I think we teach ourselves that the whole core of marketing, the whole core of business, the whole core of building brands that people care about is that you've got to learn how to turn insight into value better than your competitors. And so with that insight, what am I going to do that? So what I noticed immediately, the second thing I noticed was, let's test that. And in the world of startups, where you're usually fighting, you know, you're the David to these massive Goliaths, you know, these incumbents in every category. And I thought, well, if everyone's bar for meaning and value just went all the way up here, maybe almost every business is starting over. And so I realized that maybe, and we're trying to do that in each one of our 5 different projects now in the innovation labs this summer, course, and we're going to try to do that going forward with all the brands and businesses we work with. Let's test that. Let's see if there's almost an advantage to being a startup, to be the newcomer, because everybody else is still trying to do the same old things they're used to, because they think that they don't have that insight you have about everything has changed, but most importantly, the meaning of value in humans' lives has changed, and maybe we can use that.
Okay, my wheels are spinning. You've just given me so much to think about. I almost got distracted for a moment.
That was my goal, Susan.
I'm already going. I'm thinking of our next event that we can have to talk about that.
I only want to make sure that if you do something like that, that we figure out a way to work deserts and tents into the topic, because I think Maria's idea about all we had was deserts and tents, I think that's an interesting place to start any idea from.
Okay, well, if nothing else, you can craft a virtual background for us, so we can all appear to be in our tents in the desert, working together to create something out of nothing. So this is a really great time in our event tonight to open up for questions. If any of the students have questions for Benjy about his summer internships, what it's like managing 2 internships at the same time, one being in a completely different time zone. Any questions for Maria or Thom about the Innovation Lab, the startups, the course being taught, you can put your questions into the chat if you have anything. You can also email me your questions post-event, and I can forward them to the respective person to get back to you. So I'd like to segue for a second. Our next event, which is on July 22nd, through this summer, our students, even as they're working from home or from a location remotely that may not be their home, they're still meeting so many people. They're still being exposed to corporate cultures and being part of events and practicing their pitches and getting to know people. And the next event is creating references and mentors for life. That this isn't a one-off summer, that you have to take these relationships that you have this summer and you have to nurture them and you have to cultivate them, and you have to identify who you've worked with this summer who can be part of your personal board of directors, your toolkit for life. This summer really changes your narrative, and the people who are a part of it can really help you create your course, for the future. So our next event, July 22nd, 7 p.m., it will be moderated by Matt Garcia, an associate director in the Career Center. And it's really important if you want to take the summer and really use it to its fullest to open up doors for the future in identifying those references and those mentors that you're working with right now. So we don't have any questions in the chat for now. Is there anything that you'd like to leave us with for tonight? I want to thank you so much for joining in the middle of the summer when I know people are working so hard and taking vacation. I do really appreciate your time. Maria, any closing?
I think thank you for having us here. I think it's great that we get a chance to share the story of the kind of work we're doing. And I'd love to hear from students and to get their feedback, because essentially that's part of our learning, and our learning in school and our learning in business. We do something and then we want to see, well, how did it go? So guys, girls, if you have anything you want us to know, feel free to reach out. You know where to find us. And
Okay.
Have a great summer. You work so hard. Take a couple of days off. You deserve that. Fall is coming, so take a rest.
Thank you. So I'm looking at the chat now. I do have a question here. Okay. From a student, being in an online environment now, What are your thoughts on how many hours a day should be spent looking at emails and responding to your coworkers? I find myself struggling with this. I think when you're in a remote world, it really never shuts off. All I hear is people are working 24 hours a day.
Right.
Email never stops. Slack never stops. Teams never stops. WhatsApp never stops. How do students, how do you manage that? Thom, any thoughts on
I am not the one to give advice in this way.
that?
I have spent so much, and I caveat my response by saying, be careful. Because before you know it, you're constantly trying to stay ahead, or you're constantly trying to do the right thing, or you're constantly trying to be, the responsive one, or you're constantly, and what happens is, because of your point about everything being so right there, and us sitting here for the summer and for the day, why not? It's hard. I spent a good portion of my career globally working for large holding company, advertising companies. And I always had a client or a colleague or somebody that was in another time zone. So I was working from 4 in the morning until 12 at night, depending on when the meeting was. And that got me some very bad habits. And so my advice would be to catch yourself early and often, and find something to break up the rhythm of that day that makes you, I was just going to mimic and actually close my laptop. Find something, whether it's a timer, or whether it's another signal that says it's time to unplug the phone and the laptop, or turn the phone upside down and close my laptop for 45 minutes. Find those days, find those moments in your day, at least 3 of them.
Thank you for that. Yeah, it's incredibly important. I don't even think we're aware sometimes. I like the idea of a timer, just to kind of keep you aware of how much time you're spending doing this. Benjy, did you want to add something else tonight?
Yeah, well, I just want to add to what Thom just said because it's a good point. What I've been doing is I've been setting some times where I would be looking at my emails, and when I would be looking at Google Hangouts, that's what I've been utilizing. And I'll take breaks from it, meaning I'll look at it once I start the job, see if I missed anything from last night, being that it is an international internship and my boss is in England, so he could be telling me stuff while I'm sleeping. So I'll be, I'll look at like 9 o'clock, 9:30 to see if I missed anything. Then from 9:30 until like 11:15, I'm just doing my work for whatever I need to accomplish for the day, or at least get a head start. And then I'll go back to see if there's anything that I'm missing, if there's any updates. But if I'm just so focused on my emails and on the Google Hangouts the entire time, I'm not really going to get any work done. I'm just going to be even more overwhelmed going into the next day, which is something that I don't want, because it's a summer. You also want to have your fun, so take if you need a break, you take a half-hour break, you go for a walk, you get ice cream, you want to hang out with a friend. If you have a friend locally, all right, fine, you hang out with them for like an hour and a half, and then you get back to work. And the best part about this is that there's, it's remote, so there's no transportation. You don't have to go into, at least for me, because I'm New York based, I don't have to go into the city and then come back. I have so much time on my hands now because I don't need transportation, that I could utilize my nights even more than that. I could go to sleep earlier but still be even more productive because I have so much free time on my hands. So yeah, definitely, time management is key, especially during this time, and you always need to incorporate some fun. But what I wanted to add beforehand was just that, just looking back at, the past semester and the summer, it really, really has made a huge impression on me, the way that YU really has thought of the students in all the different areas. It's not like they just said, okay, we're going to focus on internships solely on one major base. Rather, they focused on pretty much every single major to try to see how they could gain some skills in whatever they're going into. And I found that to be really, really special. And unfortunately, I still know people outside of YU who still have no idea what they're doing this summer. They signed up for a summer class because that was just their last resort. But I just found it to be super special how, YU had us in mind the entire time. The fact that they were able to come up with this for in a span of a month, and they keep on coming up with new ideas because they keep on getting email alerts about new job opportunities to apply to. I just find that to be truly, truly incredible. And I do really hope that this continues in the future, because there are just so many internship opportunities that you guys really just created out of this. And I'm just so thankful.
And YU now has its next marketing campaign right here from one of our students.
Dr. Blekher
Very,
wanted some feedback, so yeah.
very nicely put. And I think that sentiment is shared by all. So on that note, I'm going to close this evening, and I thank each of you again so much for your contributions, not only tonight, but to our students all of the time, and for your good work. So thank you, everyone. Have a nice night, and stay safe. We'll see you soon.
It
Bye-bye.
was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks
you.
so
Bye
much.
bye. Bye bye.
Thank you.